Welcome back. Now, advancing trade, integration and investment is essential to Africa's long-term economic resilience and global competitiveness. At the B20 summit, I caught up with His Excellency Wamkele Mene, Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, who calls for Africa to deepen integration and pivot to alternative markets through the agreement. Here's that conversation.
I think we are seeing a shift in the right direction.
Okay.
2023, intra-Africa trade was at $220 billion, which was a 12.5% increase to the previous year. That's a very positive shift. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, as you correctly said, now the largest export market for Nigeria is the African continent. And the good news is that their exports to the rest of the continent, it's not unprocessed goods. It is manufactured goods, value-added production, and of course, the services sector. It's a very, very positive and encouraging step forward. Egypt, Morocco, South Africa, also, we are seeing more and more of these countries, large economies in Africa, exporting under the preferences, the preferential regime of the AfCFTA and the market that it is offering. So it is very encouraging. However, of course, we would have preferred that the numbers, the trade flows and the trade volumes are much, much higher. But we know the reality of the challenges. Transport and logistics,
yes.
Infrastructure deficit, still a lack of harmonized custom systems for transit, for trade facilitation. We know that there are still these constraints that we have to resolve. And then, of course, the cost of trade finance, which continues to be high. The framework, the legal framework, the AfCFTA, in my view, is exactly the opportunity that we require to have trade as one of the drivers of economic output in Africa. And that is our mission as the AfCFTA.
And we'll get to some of those other challenges. I just want to get your thoughts around that short-term sort of impact when it comes to AGOA ending. The likes of South Africa, our citrus industry and automotive industry really depended on it. In Lesotho, the textile industry was hard hit.
Yes.
Are you seeing anything when it comes to that, and perhaps just your thoughts around what's currently happening?
We are going to experience short-term losses. The countries that you've mentioned, South Africa on garments, Lesotho on garments to the US under AGOA, South Africa on the auto sector, Kenya, Madagascar, Nigeria, Angola. These are the countries that are very exposed to the US market, and the expiry of AGOA, in addition to the imposition of tariffs which range from 15% to up to 35% in some cases, will certainly will cause a market distortion as far as entry into the US market is concerned. However, I believe we should look at the medium to long term. How do we pivot to a different market from, let's say, the US market for garments from Lesotho, and find an alternative market either in the rest of the world or here on the African continent through the AfCFTA. Similarly, with excuse me, in the case of the auto sector, where South Africa is exports over $2 billion of vehicles to the US. The continent of Africa has a population of 1.4 billion people, 17% of the global population. So there is a market for South African produced vehicles to be exported to the rest of the continent, which imports used vehicles from all over the world. So I think that medium to long term, we have a very unique opportunity in this crisis to create an alternative supply chain, to create an alternative value-added production centers across the continent to deal with this deficit that is, at least in the case of the auto sector, for the continent of Africa not being able to produce vehicles for herself. So I see an opportunity in this crisis.
Now,
of course, we're not going to be able to pivot overnight.
Yes.
It will take time, including establishing alternative supply chains. That will take time, and it will require capital to be deployed, primarily by development finance institutions, so that we can have a viable, commercially meaningful market in Africa.
And quickly before I let you go, SG, this newfound opportunity that we find ourselves in, are we ready for it? Are we ready to deal with the influx that could come through, especially when it comes to harmonization, whether it's through government and policy? Are we ready?
We have to be ready. We have to apply the rules of the AfCFTA to design the markets that we want, and that's what the rules enable us to do. Whether it is industrial development, the AfCFTA is clear on how do we design a continental industrial development framework, or indeed if it is the digital economy, we have a very clear pathway to take advantage of the digital economy. Pharmaceuticals also, pharmaceutical production, vaccine production. There are pathways for us to establish and enhance our capacity in a way that would be harmonized towards a single market.
That was Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, His Excellency Wamkele Mene.